The Honourable Minister Kent Hare, Minister of Veterans Affairs, and Deputy Minister Walter Nantinchuk, General Retired. Today we again will start with the Minister with 10 minutes, and then we will go to the witnesses, and we have that all in order. So welcome today, Minister. The floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm pleased to return to the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs to discuss the 2016-17 supplementary estimates B to Parliament on behalf of Veterans Affairs Canada. Let me preface my remarks before this committee with an observation of the debt Canada owes its men and women in uniform. Veterans Affairs Canada is working hard to provide veterans and their families with the care and support they need when and where they need it. We're also working to engage Canadians in commemorating all who have served. Last year, the Prime Minister gave me a mandate to ensure that our government lives up to its obligation to veterans and their families. The Department has done a lot of work over the past year and has delivered on a number of the priorities in my mandate letter. And these supplementary estimates reflect those accomplishments and the work that remains to be done. My first year as Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defence has been rewarding, albeit challenging. I've traveled across the country and met outstanding people, older veterans and younger veterans, as well as current members of the Canadian Armed Forces, who will one day become veterans. They have shared their stories and their struggles. I have learned so much. I've learned that while 73% of veterans successfully transition from military to civilian life, 27% of them struggle. They need our help. That is why our department is here, and it's where we are at. This is the reality that we face, and there is no silver bullet. We will make incremental changes and find better and better ways to help veterans rebuild their lives. As a country, we must provide that help. We are transforming the way the Department of Veterans Affairs works, improving the way we deliver services to veterans and their families. That's the purpose of this supplementary allocation. For this year's supplementary estimates for Veterans Affairs Canada, this supplementary allocation will provide $130 million in funding. This 3.6% increase over the current budget increases it from $3.64 billion to $3.77 billion. These funds will help our government fulfill its commitment to Canada's veterans. So what is the additional allocation for? It will be used to move forward on our stated and approved initiatives, to move forward on the goal of ensuring that we live up to our obligations to our men and women in uniform. These include increasing the value of the Disability Award from $310,000 to $360,000, enhancing the earnings loss benefit from 75% to 90% of an injured veteran's pre-release salary, enhancing the permanent impairment allowance so that the veteran is appropriately compensated for the impact of a service-related impairment on his or her career, reopening the 9 Veterans Affairs offices across the country with an additional one in Surrey, British Columbia, and extending mobile outreach in Canada's north to ensure we are serving our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit veterans adequately, and hiring more staff to improve delivery of much-needed services to veterans, including hiring more case managers. Each case manager's workload will be on average 25 cases to one veteran. Commemoration of Canada's men and women in uniform and of their accomplishments is a key part of Veterans Affairs responsibilities. That's why the supplementary allocations include funds to commemorate major milestones of the First and Second World Wars in 2017, the same year that we will celebrate Canada's 150th birthday. Events will be held in Canada and France to mark the centennial of the Battle of Vimy next year. Commemorative ceremonies and events will be held at the Canadian National Vimy Memorial in France and at the National War Memorial in Ottawa and in communities across the country on April 9th. Major milestone events will also be held to mark the centennial of the Battle of Passchendaele and the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Dieppe. The estimates also include an increase in the funeral and burial program, which is administered by the Last Post Fund, which provides financial assistance for funeral and burial services, including grave markings for eligible veterans. This will make it easier for veterans' families to provide a dignified funeral and burial for their loved ones. In addition, there's an allocation for the 2017 Invictus Games in Toronto, which will be the host city for this international sporting competition for ill and injured military members and veterans. It leverages the rehabilitative powers of sport to honor the men and women who have come face to face with the reality of sacrificing for their country. Team Canada will proudly represent the host country with a roster made up as many as 90 active Canadian Armed Force members and veterans. Finally, the allocation includes a request resulting from the Treasury Board submission for the transfer of St. Anne's Hospital from federal to provincial authority. Veterans Affairs Canada has accomplished a great deal over the past year, but there is still much more to do, and we are working with the Department of National Defence to reduce the complexity of the transition from Canadian Armed Force member to veteran. We are also working closely with veterans groups and stakeholders to ensure that we get it right on the other items on the priority list, including the reestablishment of an option for a lifelong pension. All the funding in the supplementary estimate B has been previously approved by Treasury Board. Our meeting today is simply to have the funding added to the department's current budget. This will allow the department to move forward on its initiatives with overarching goal of ensuring Canada's veterans receive the respect, support, care, and economic opportunities they deserve. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much for your hard work on this committee. It is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Minister. We'll start our first round with 6 minutes. Mr. Brassard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today to speak about the supplementary estimates. I'll get right into it. As part of your request, there's $6.273 million that's going towards opening new service offices for hiring case managers. Now, I know you did say in your presentation that you expect a 25-to-1 ratio. Can you break that down in terms of cost? Do you have the ability to do that for us? What that means per case?
That's a very difficult number. As part of our changes that we made since coming into budget 2016 is, again, reopening the 9 offices that were closed under the former administration. We have now opened 5 of those. The commitment to hire back staff, roughly 1/3 of the frontline staff was let go under the former administration. We have began the process of hiring back. In fact, we've hired back 325 frontline workers. We're going to be getting all the way to 400. For an exact breakdown of the staffing component and how that works to get to a 25-to-1 ratio, I can pass more details along to General Natinchuk, if you mind providing anything.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question, sir. I don't have the detail of all the breakdowns that you're talking about, how much are in the offices and the amount of resources required for all of the case managers. Are you looking for veteran by veteran what the average cost is per case manager? If
Well,
that's
what
the
the-
case,
what
then we
the
would
av-
have to take that question under advisement and come back.
And that's precisely what I'm looking for under this allocation, is how much would it cost per veteran based on the numbers that you present here, as well as the opening of the 9 offices, as the minister has spoken about. The other thing I want to ask too, $5.615 million going towards processing benefit applications following changes to the new Veterans Charter in 2016. Just so that I'm clear, that's not to deal with the amount that goes towards the benefits. That's actually for staff to process it. How do you come up with that number for the processing?
So, Minister, what we have to, sorry, sir, what we have to do is go back, if that's all right, Minister, is go back and actually look at all of the files, the case files for the increase in the earning loss benefit. So we're actually bringing on casual staff and others, because as of the 1st of October 2016, the earning loss benefit was put into place to go from 75% to 90%. And so we're looking at all of those files, and it's over in the order of five.
These are personnel costs, then, Mr. Natividad.
Correct.
To go back and look at those files.
Exactly. And following us today,
So
sir,
are we hiring more people to do that then?
So for a case like that, where we have a requirement for a short-term reinforcement, we would have casual or temporary folks come in to assist us. But while we have the adjudication of new files coming in, we're finding a lot of files or new applicants are coming in with these changes to our benefits, and they are welcomed, as the minister has mentioned. Concurrently, we have to go and look at the files that we currently have and determine what the increase in terms of the earning loss benefit is. Similarly, when we do the disability award for the 1st of April 2017, we'll be looking at in the order of 50 to 60,000 files and looking at the disability award increases.
Okay, so if you're hiring part-time or temporary people, I just need a simple answer. Are you confident that you're going to be able to find people that are qualified to go back and look at these files and deal with them to the extent that they require?
Sir, we will only bring in folks who are qualified, and in Charlottetown and Prince Edward Island, we've got a lot of great folks who have been with the department or
You're talking about external hires, though, coming in, not those that are working there right now.
Correct.
Okay. So I want to ask the Minister, with respect to your mandate letter of the two, how many have you completed up to this point of the 23 requests of you by the Prime Minister?
Well, my review of the Prime Minister's mandate letter states I have 15 mandate letter items to complete.
How many of those items have you
We have
completed at this
completed
point?
6 to date.
6 of those to date?
6 of those to date.
Of the estimates that are requested here, how many more do you anticipate that you're going to be able to complete of the number that's indicated in the mandate letter?
Well, we remain committed to each and every line item in the mandate letter from the Prime Minister. And as you're aware, we have a 4-year mandate, and yet we want to get it done as quickly as possible. We are working hard on creating those synergies and loops that can do it in the most effective and efficient manner. Because our real goal is not just to knock off, put check boxes by things in my mandate letter. We're looking at trying to make transformational change to really better outcomes of our soldiers, sailors, and aviators who find themselves in Veterans Affairs Canada. We want to have better outcomes where we're at right now, from having 27% of veterans who struggle to incrementally do better, to see more success.
Thank you, Minister. In the short time that I have, the issue of service dogs for those suffering from PTSD has come up. What, if anything, are you doing about that, sir?
Well, that's a good question, and I saw that came about in the news the other day, where we have a veteran who's very interested in that. Obviously, there's tax code changes are in the purview of the Finance Minister. That being said, our department currently is funding some studies around service dogs and how they are currently working with veterans and those people on many issues surrounding PTSD and the like. We're looking forward to the results of those studies, and also we can take some of this information and changes to the attention of the Finance Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Fraser?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you so much for being here again before our committee, and General, welcome back. Good to have you both with us. I want to first of all say, Minister, that I believe that you are doing a good job in putting together the outcomes that we are looking for and that were expressly mandated to you in the mandate letter. So I want to thank you for the good work that you've done, and I think we are on the right track. I want to ask you specifically regarding the earnings loss benefit and the fact that this will increase the pre-release pre-release salary to 90% from 75%. And I know that's part of the supplementary estimates here, the money being allocated for that. Could you talk a little bit about the earnings loss benefit and why that is so important to fulfill that commitment?
And it really is. As part of our commitment to financial security in Budget 2016, we fulfilled our mandate commitment to increase the earnings loss benefit from 75% of a soldier's pre-release salary to 90% of a veteran's index monthly salary. These changes came into effect on October 1, 2016, and really they will go a long way to putting more money in the pockets of our men and women who have served in our military to be able to do them more with their families. We're very proud of this commitment. Those checks have been rolling since October 1, and really it's finding our men and women who find themselves in Veterans Affairs Canada being in the middle class, allowing them better outcomes. And without financial security, you don't have much security at all. You aren't able to reach your new normal. You aren't able to concentrate on your therapies, not able to concentrate on moving your life forward. So we're very proud of making that commitment, and it was a very important part of our whole suite of benefits and the changes we're making to try and make things better in our department.
Thank you, Minister, and I think that is true. We have heard from a number of veterans who have testified before our committee about the challenges that they face, and one of the things that makes it even more difficult, of course, is worrying about having enough money to pay your bills, and so I believe that it is important that the earnings loss benefit continue on the track that you've got it on. The permanent impairment allowance, if you could talk about that just for a minute so that I understand why the improvements to that are so necessary, please.
Well, what we are finding is the permanent impairment allowance is put together to track a man or woman's career as it would go forward in the military after they have suffered an illness or injury. To be honest, we weren't doing a very good job of tracking those numbers. In fact, most people who came into Veterans Affairs Canada found themselves not progressing along any career path changes. So what we did, we secured money from the Treasury Board in the last budget to do a better job of being able to adequately assess a person's career, make sure they're getting the incremental changes to their earnings that they would receive should of their career not have been cut short by illness or injury. And this will allow them to sort of recognize their success and understand that their inability to serve in the military has not impacted them in a financial way. So we looked at this in a more fair and fulsome fashion that more recognizes what their outcomes would have been but for the injury.
Thank you. Turning now to the office reopenings, which are also mentioned in the supplementary estimates. Minister, I want to thank you for going to Sydney, Nova Scotia. I'm from the other end of Nova Scotia, but I know you were there with the Prime Minister to see the reopening of that office, and it was very important to veterans right across the Maritimes to know that office was reopening, and I thank you for being there to do that. With regard to the offices right across the country, you say 5 of them are now reopened, so there are four more of the 9 to go, as well as an additional one that I think was committed to reopening in Surrey, British Columbia. Could you talk about those openings and when we can expect to see them open right across the country?
Well, it was a great day in Sydney with the Prime Minister, where we met the community who were looking forward to the reopening of that Veterans Affairs office. It was a real joy for me to personally be there, as well as you could see the relief in the community and many of the veterans who were looking forward to that occurring. I can say we have opened 5 of the offices to date. We will have all 9 opened by May of next year, 2017. We continue to hire new employees to fill those spaces and to adequately staff them. Our analysis when we came into office shortly after October 19th was we needed some more help, given that in Surrey, BC, we have a large cohort of veterans who are settling in that area. I think the number is upwards of 5,000, so that area needs help and assistance. And we never had outreach in the north that would really be effective and proactive. So we put together a mobile team to be able to go out there, do the good work, ensuring that our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit veterans, as well as the other members who have served up in the North region who choose to settle there after the fact, get the help they need from our department. This is a large nation, and I think moving towards that northern presence has been a good move and will allow us to serve the population better and allow more flexibility in programming and getting people help wherever they live in this great nation.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Ms. Matheson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. I have a number of questions. I hope we can get to all of them. The first is regarding St. Anne's Hospital, and I'm wondering, what's the benefit to veterans of that transfer from the federal department to the province? Because I have heard some concerns raised, some complaints from veterans that the service has declined since that transfer. And I'm wondering if you're aware of those complaints, and if so, have you or will you respond to those concerns? That's number one. And the second part of the same question, are you working, or how are the working conditions of the staff who look after folks there? Are they the same as prior to the transfer, or are they different?
Well, St. Anne's has played a long, proud history in our nation. It was the first Veterans Affairs hospital that came on board after World War I. And, you know, when we went to national health care in 1967, we essentially went to provincially run health care systems, and St. Anne's was the last of the Veterans Affairs hospitals that we returned to provincial control. Largely, Veterans Affairs Canada provides health care in over 1,500 facilities across the nation, coast to coast to coast. And that's largely what our veterans community has called for, because they want to live in the communities where they're living. And this model that we've gone to is essentially a more effective, more efficient way. I can also say that because St. Anne's Hospital, we were having some veterans who were, you know, sadly reaching the end of their lives, and we're not using the hospital as much. In the midst of running an efficient healthcare system that allow more of the Quebec people to take part in it, this was a good deal for both us at Veterans Affairs Canada as well as the province of Quebec, because we have to look at the whole healthcare system in that manner. I can say that we have known in the transfer that I was back there on November 11th. Many of the veterans are very happy with what is happening there. I can say we're always on the listen to what is happening on the ground, and yes, we have heard some issues come up, and yet we are dealing there. We remain committed to the veterans at St. Anne's, and I know my Deputy Minister is in contact on a regular and ongoing basis, and maybe you would like to take it from here.
Thanks very much, ma'am, for the question. And just say that we had about half of the federal employees accepted offers with the province, and before the transfer, worked with the province of Quebec to recruit and to train as many additional staff for the hospital. One of the positives of this transfer, as the minister indicated, is folks in need in the region now have access to the facility. Currently, we have in the order of 260 veterans in the hospital, but the capacity of the hospital is well above 400. So opening those beds to Canadians across the board is key. And the other aspect is so positive, we actually have spouses of veterans who for the first time can be in the same facility as the member who served.
All right, thank you. I want to talk a bit about testimony that we heard in regard to mefloquine. Now, Health Canada has updated concerns as of August in regard to the long-term impact of mefloquine. I wonder, does VAC intend to address the needs of veterans who were denied benefits because of a lack of understanding of the impact of the drug? And will VAC reach out to veterans who have previously been denied services in order to make sure that their needs are met? And finally, what kind of support can or will VAC provide for mefloquine survivors, those who are still experiencing the symptoms, the night sweats, the insomnia, the suicidal thoughts?
Well, the Department of National Defense and our department takes the health and well-being of CF members and veterans very seriously. Veterans Affairs, we provide a range of programs to promote welfare of those who become ill or injured in the line of duty, including disability and related health care benefits, rehabilitation services, financial benefits, and supports to families. And it does not matter what type of injury that a person has, as long as it's tied to their military service. So I'd encourage any and all members, regardless of what issues they are suffering from, as long as it relates to their military service, which you have outlined, where our doors are open. We have 4,000 mental health professionals that we work with across this country. We have 11 OSI clinics plus satellite clinics all over this country that we're willing to work for. We're open for business. We got to encourage more people to come forward and to get their issues dealt with. And that's what our department is committed to, full stop. And so if any individuals need help, I encourage them to come forward, and we will do our level best to assist them on finding their way forward.
Okay, we will communicate that.
Ms. Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and General, for being with us today and explaining some of these numbers and giving us some more detail. As you know, we've been very focused on service delivery over the last several months, but we would like, one of the numbers that are here that I'd like to talk about today is commemoration. And I know as a committee we all understand that it's a very important item in the budget, and I see here that there's been a significant increase. And I'd just like to comment that we've seen kind of a surge of response from Canadians, I feel, over the last few years when it comes to commemoration. Specifically in this last year, we've recognized Beaumont Hamel. And also, recently, we've had a fair bit of support from my colleague Colin Fraser's private member's bill on Remembrance Day as a federal legal holiday. And so as we go into the next year and we look at commemorating Vimy Ridge, Passchendaele, and Dieppe, and I see an amount here, I'm wondering if you could expand for us on what events that's going towards and what's happening here in Canada.
Well, I too would like to applaud Colin on his private member's bill on Remembrance Day as a national holiday. I think it's a good move that sets a stage of leadership of ways we should be commemorating and thinking about the men and women who have served in the Canadian Armed Forces, the 2.3 million of them who have served in that role since the beginning of Confederation. But given that this is a big deal for commemoration, it's important for us not only as Canadians, but it's important to our role of not only remembering, but ensuring we have good people willing to come into the military. If we don't honor and respect their service, their sacrifice of them and their families, well, then we don't do their memory the honor it deserves. We don't show respect to those in the Canadian Armed Forces and encourage good people to go into this honorable career that we cherish so much in this room, and in fact Canadians do. But given this year is very important, and I think our supplementary estimates shows that. We have the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Vimy Ridge, where many historians, and in fact our Prime Minister often says it was the birth of the Canadian nation, where we really accomplished a great deal. Also, the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Passchendaele and 75th anniversary of the Battle of Dieppe. I had the privilege this summer of going back to France for the beginning of the battle to recognize 100 years after the start of the Battle of the Somme and the Battle of Beaumont-Hamel, which is so important to Newfoundlanders as well as this nation, and to go back there and to understand sort of the significance of what transpired all those years ago, and yet going back there to understand still the role Canada wants to play in the world, how we want to lead, how we want to be part of building a better, secure, more peaceful, human rights-based world, and honoring that sacrifice that those men and many Canadians have done over the years is truly important to the work that we do. And this year's a big year for that. I know the Prime Minister and others will be going back to France for the celebrations in Vimy, and I know the whole nation is looking forward to it. And it's an important thing that we do here as parliamentarians. It's an important thing that Canadians do, and our department's going to ensure we do it right.
Great. And will there be opportunities for those that aren't able to go to Vimy, for veterans and youth and all Canadians to take part in that commemoration here in Canada?
Well, there will be celebrations nationwide. We're currently working through a lot of the planning on that. I know we're working with partners at the provincial level that we're trying to organize and arrange festivities with them. Of course, we'll probably be reaching out to the municipalities as well, as this is an important time in our country to reflect and pay tribute to the men and women who have sacrificed for our freedoms. Hey, we're lucky. Well, since I'm born, and frankly, all of us in this room, we've lived in peace and security our entire lives, where we haven't had a battle here on the home front. It's because of the sacrifice of those men and women who have gone before.
Thank you very much. We talked a bit about St. Anne's already, but I just wanted to go back to that for a second and ask about quality assurance for delivery of service. You know, we're making a transition here. Do we have a process in place to make sure that the level of service continues as we transfer?
So we have a transition committee that we maintain with the province, and on that we have two key leaders out of Veterans Affairs, plus a veteran from the region, Lieutenant General retired Michel Maisonneuve, who's also on the foundation of St. Anne's Hospital, meeting with the province, meeting with the hospital staff on a regular basis and following up where there are challenges. The key challenges, has been alluded before and kind of mentioned, is staff, because half of the staff have changed. And the key was that the federal staff had a culture, had an understanding of the veterans. So when you see half of the hospital change over, and then we have the introduction of additional civilians, so the additional staff coming in, we have a period of cultural transition, training transition. And so it is difficult, especially dealing with a population who has served the way they have, but are older in age. And so that has been the key challenge. But we're working very closely, as the Minister indicated. I maintain contact with the province on a very regular basis, and as do the senior leadership of the department. And we have visits, as the Minister has indicated, and I visit as well, with the hospital and talking to not only the residents committee, but also the families of those veterans and other key veterans in the hospital.
Thank you. Mr. Yolfison.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Minister, in general. Now, we were talking about the opening the Veterans Affairs Office. I was honored to be present at the reopening of the one in Brandon, Manitoba. Quite an exciting event. Now, could you describe what challenges there have been in reopening these offices?
Well, when we got the budget passed in the end of June, we had to work with procurement, our procurement minister, Judy Foote, and to her credit, once that budget money was secure. We gave her the specifications of what we would need, what type of veteran population was in the area, and she went about and did her good work and came up with appropriate offices to go about to serve the veteran and their family populations that are there. Of course, these are offices that can do a multitude of things, from intake to basic form filling to health and wellness guidance to putting them in contact with appropriate resources at various levels of different governments. Are really welcomed by our veteran community. So we've actually moved with great speed. If you really think about the budget just passing here last June and already getting 5 of them open, I think it's a tremendous credit to Judy and her team and how they've gone about doing things. And I know we're very excited by the progress. And I think, in fact, when I went to the announcement this summer, there was a sense of excitement in Brownston. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there with you when you actually opened up, but I'm assuming it was well received from the community. Were there any challenges that you noted, General, or everything going fairly smoothly?
I think once we have the location, again, as the Minister indicated, working with our partners across government, make sure we have the right facility and all of the furniture and that kind of thing. It's just making sure we have the right people, the right skill sets. Some of those, when offices were closed, went into retirement. So trying to get the right people with the right skill sets coming in. I was just in the Kelowna office a couple weeks ago, and again, some of the folks who were there have left. So getting the right people in. And then it's the handoff of the case managed files. Those veterans who, in the case of Brandon, have been case managed out of Winnipeg, and then that handoff once we have the right people on the ground in Brandon, and the handoff, and so that it is as seamless as it can be for the veteran. At the end of the day, it's about the veteran and our processes being as veteran-centric as possible.
Thank you. And has it been a challenge to find staff? I think there's some allusion to that earlier. As you say, I know some of the staff that had been let go had retired.
Well, in the main, we've gone about the business of hiring staff on a regular and ongoing basis since coming in last October 19th. We've committed to hiring 400. Some areas of the country are easier to staff than others, and is a challenge in some reason with the Canadian government having a relatively linear pay scale, and some of areas of this country having different expectations and different costs associated with housing and the like to find appropriate people. But we're finding good people with backgrounds in social work, the expertise we need at various levels. And I think it's also important that to note that Veterans Affairs is also concentrating on giving veterans an opportunity where possible to be hired within our department. I can say we're putting a greater focus on that, and I'm very proud of that, to lead by example on that, to get as many veterans hired. I know the former government brought in the Veterans Priority Hiring Act in 2014. We haven't seen yet some real outcomes on that, but that's why we're trying to drive that as a department, as well as challenging other departments to really lean in on this, to be able to assess where we can get more veterans, people leading the Canadian Armed Forces, a real opportunity to be part of the public service. And I know our department's taking this seriously. We had a good meeting on this in the department last week. We actually brought a person on board to head our public service recruitment within our department, and then to hopefully expand out to allow him to leverage his expertise, how he arranges that within our department, to look at a whole of government approach to finding more success for our men and women who leave the military. And that's also part of the work I'm doing with Minister Sajan on the transition piece, where we're really lining things up so when a man or woman leaves the military, they're good to go. When they leave the military, they leave with their pension check on day one. They leave with ideas on what they're going to do around work, ideas around where they're going to get to education, where they're going to find their family doctor, where they're going to get their illness and injury treated, should that be necessary, and really professionalizing the outtake of when men or women leave our military. We do a great job at getting them into the military, from basic training to training them up for ops, extended missions and the like. We are putting more focus now on professionalizing the release, and that's what a lot of the work over the last 8 months since the end of the last session has been devoted for. Really, I can say that the work with Minister Sajjan as well as General Natinchuk and Chief of Defence Staff Vance, because of their extraordinary experience both in the military and understanding that challenge, and now General Natinchuk's knowledge of Veterans Affairs. He's been here for how long? 4 years now? Two. Well, 2 years now. But that experience, that level, I think we're at a historic point because of their knowledge and our Prime Minister's vision of seeing that seamless transition.
Thank you, Minister.
We're going to have better outcomes.
Ms. Wagenthal.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister and General, for being here today. I have a lot of questions, so don't be offended if I cut you off. I have lots of things I want an answer to.
I will not be offended.
Great. Okay, you have a huge mandate here, and one of them that it appears you have completed is the one to provide injured veterans with 90% of their pre-release salary and index this benefit so that it keeps pace with inflation. That was a campaign promise as well, and I've watched it move throughout the process to where it's actually in your mandate letter. It was never included any information about you changing the level from corporal to senior private, which has meant minimal increases to those that are on the bottom of the totem pole, shall we say, and there was no mention of it being retroactive. So I appreciate that that's been done. Obviously, veterans would not say no to that. However, I'm just curious as to, out of the funds that have been provided thus far, obviously this is a one-time expense, how much of these funds have gone towards that retroactive payment?
We brought in the payment of this program, going from 75% of a soldier's pre-release salary to 90% on a go-forward basis. Okay, we brought in that was our promise made in the platform. That's where we committed to, and that's what we're doing. When it came to the disability award, okay, which was moving it from $310,000 to $360,000, right, we made that payment retroactive. Okay, to the 2005, the change in the new Veterans Charter, where we thought it was fair and would have been.
Do you know how much was spent on the retroactive portion?
On the retroactive portion, I don't have those exact details. No. Neither would the General, but we can try and get them for you, because we just felt, because there was a lot of, as you're aware, and your government wrestled with it, and our government's dealing with it, is trying to ease the disparities between the changes from the.
Okay, thank you very much. With the offices that have been opened, you mentioned 5 out of the 9. How many of those 5 and which ones are fully staffed, fully operational?
General?
We have Kelowna open and operational. In every one of the cases, you'll have to ask Michel Doiron, who's going to be following me in just a few moments. He'll just indicate, I know how many staff I have in each location, but whether we're actually at the upper level right now, each one of them are functioning. Kelowna, Saskatoon, which we just opened, Brandon, and Sydney, and Corner Brook. So each of them are staffed, they are functioning. Whether we are at 100% staffing levels, I don't have that in front of me right now, but they are serving veterans as we speak.
So you're not aware of how many staff are there right
now?
Well,
I actually know what we have in terms of the numbers in each location, what should be there.
Oh, I see.
But I don't have today to be absolutely accurate with you in terms of how many are there today. And if Michelle doesn't have it, then we can come back to you with a snapshot in time of where we are on those 5 offices.
Okay, thank you. Now, Minister, you've mentioned that whatever the treatment is that is needed, VAC is prepared to help our veterans. However, there isn't a recognition of the fact that mefloquine has caused specific issues for veterans, and they are not being treated specifically for that. They're being treated for PTSD, which is a mental health issue versus a brainstem injury. And so my concern is we have all these people available to serve them, and yet they are not able to get the specific help that they need. My understanding is an individual who has been treated specifically for mefloquine, actually, the appearance is it's for PTSD because otherwise he wouldn't get the type of treatment that he's needed. So why aren't we focusing on this mefloquine issue and finding out exactly what kind of treatment these veterans need and
Chair,
making sure they get it?
if I
I'm just saying the relevance on the subs, but I can flip this to the...
Well,
Yeah.
it's relevant because it's something that we need to spend money on.
Okay.
Hey, it's my understanding that Veterans Affairs Canada works with 4,000 mental health providers throughout this country. Further, we have full access to a range of complementary healthcare services at the provincial government level, where we have access to the best healthcare in this country. So I would be surprised at anything that came into our system that we could not plug a veteran suffering an illness or injury as a result of military service to not get some help they need with the issues they are dealing with.
The challenge is to identify it as a military service injury then, because we're not identifying it as a specific concern. Okay, that's fine. We've recently reduced the amount of marijuana available to our veterans that are using it as a prescribed medication. Part of the explanation was a cost-saving benefit. How much money will we be saving based on dropping the amount that they can have access to from 10 milligrams to 3 milligrams
Well,
a day? It's about
I think I have to
$3,300.
clarify the way you phrased that. When you got to remember when we made this announcement, we did this with the health and wellness of veterans and their families at the core of what and every policy change we make.
But how much money do you save on the cost-effective side?
Frankly, that hasn't even been factored into any of our analysis. I was shocked to find that in 2007, when the former government started the process of reimbursing cannabis for medicinal purpose, there was no policy directed around this. And in fact, it was essentially, in my view, an abrogation of responsibility.
Thank you, Minister.
3 successive ministers who were briefed on this issue.
Thank you,
frankly.
Minister. Mr. Bertina.
Thank you. Minister, I want to go back to the commemoration activities. In my municipal days, one of my priorities was reacquainting Hamiltonians with the city's military heritage, and I believe we're now trying to reacquaint Canadians. Not that they're that far out of the loop, but so in the money that's been earmarked, have there been discussions within the ministry about how the message is actually going to be presented to Canadians in addition to the particular events? I hope there's going to be some money spent on telling Canadians about these things.
We know this is a very important story to the Canadian people, the fabric of Canada, the importance of what the men and women who have served are in our military, and in fact, more so even with Vimy Ridge, the Battle of Passchendaele, and Dieppe have meant to this country. Our department understands the depth of their sacrifice and the importance of that story, and we're going to tell it very, very well. I know this is important from our entire government and how we're going to fold this in with our celebrations around Canada 150. In fact, the Honourable Minister of Heritage and I have also discussed this. We know the importance of this. We're taking it seriously. I can say we're going to wrap this up in everything we do this year, and it's going to be a big time to commemorate as well as celebrate as a nation together as to what we've accomplished and recognizing the sacrifice and service of the many who have gone before and served in this capacity.
Well, my hope is that this will spin off into other activities by citizens, by other municipalities. You know, we renamed part of our main downtown park Veterans Place, and General Mazenov actually did the keynote on that. He was living in Hamilton at the time before he got back into work at Collège Saint-Jean. And we did City of Hamilton Overseas Service commemorative pins and other things. And one thing led to another, and I'm wondering if your anticipation is that there will be a general pickup on these things outside of the federal government's direct contributions.
As indicated, we've already reached out to our provincial counterparts and others to try and lead the charge, so to speak, in making sure we're honoring what has been accomplished to date, the tremendous service and sacrifice of the men and women who have served in the Canadian Armed Forces and their families. But maybe, General, you could give me some more detail on what we're planning.
I think I'd just also like to highlight, in addition to what the Minister has mentioned, like we do for the Remembrance Week, educational products for schools across Canada. So right from the grassroots all the way through, and also the linkages of First Nations, Indigenous peoples, and their contribution not only to the Vimy Ridge, but to other battles in World War I.
Yes. If I have time, on the St. Anne's Hospital, the sum of $42.9 million was requested for the transfer. What did that transfer agreement involve? Like what? The terms of the transfer.
To be clear, for that $42 million, that's for workforce adjustments, as we had federal employees who were transitioning to retirement and for their benefits. So that really captures the cost of the $42 million, sir. The transfer agreement, we can share it with you. It's really quite in-depth, but the key is a seamless transfer, maintaining the same level of care that the veterans enjoyed under federal ownership, now to provincial, that veterans could speak a language of their choice, but also that the door was open to additional veterans who want to move into the hospital. A data point that I was given here today, that since the transfer occurred on the 1st of April, 43 additional veterans, have been admitted to the hospital over and above civilians moving into other wards of the hospital.
Right. Thanks very much. More?
1 minute.
Oh, okay. The employees' working conditions, and I'm understanding that it's seamless in terms of how the functions are carried out in the hospital.
Yes, sir. For each of the veterans, they'll be on specific wards, and we will ensure that they have the same level of service that they did while it was a federal hospital, and also access to other support services like physiotherapy, an arts and crafts program. We've also ensured that the day center for veterans of World War II and Korea who are still very mobile come in on a drop-in center. We supported the volunteers who are there as well. So as much as possible to keep it in a seamless situation, and working with the province in terms of their staffing of the hospital.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
10 seconds. One of the individuals who hasn't needed that help is a 96-year-old veteran of the Dieppe raid who hopes to go back next year for the 75th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kitchen, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and General, for coming to this committee. Appreciate you being here. Minister, the budget allocates $6 million for being earmarked for the Invictus Games. And can you tell us what percentage of the Invictus Games budget that might amount to?
Well, thanks for the question. I don't have that exact number, but The Invictus Games are primarily being led by, I believe, which organization?
Michael Burns, True Patriot Love.
Michael Burns at True Patriot Love, and they've taken the lead on this. They've gone forth and put together really a good start to this. We had a rally around this with Prince Harry came back in Toronto to sort of celebrate where we're going for this. I don't have the exact numbers you're looking for, but I do know that it's going to be a great show with lots of our Canadian Armed Force members as well as veterans who have suffered illness or injury as a result.
Thank you that it's going to be a great show, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity. It's great for our soldiers. The question, though, is what percentage of the budget that they're going to use is coming from that, like that $6 million? How much is the amount? Because I happened to be at Simver for the 4 days of Simver, and I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Burns, and we chatted. And I believe there might be another ask coming. And the question is that ask already factored into this $6 million? And if not, where will that money come from?
We've committed to the Invictus Games. We provided $10 million in funding for that organization. We believe that we've committed greatly to this effort, and that it will be an excellent showing. For further details,
so the $6 million will be the total that's going?
To clarify, the federal government's total contribution to the Invictus is $10 million. The 6 is the additional coming into the department to flow through to Invictus, but totally and with a contribution from other departments will be $10 million going across. Keeping in mind that Invictus is also running a partnership with the province of Ontario that is making a contribution. I understand the city of Toronto was making a contribution, plus many charitable organizations, including True Patriot Love. So to give you a snapshot in time in terms of what the federal proportion would be as a whole, we will have to actually go back to Invictus and figure that out, sir.
Okay, thank you.
3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon me, 2 minutes, sorry.
So question I have for you, in the operating expenses, there's allocated $773 million that were allocated, and it's broken down into healthcare, rehabilitation, and reestablishment services. Can we get those figures actually, or do you have them with you as to what those actual amounts are? And can you break that down for us?
I don't have them readily at hand, but following us is the Chief Financial Officer in Corporate Services, Rear Admiral retired Liz Stewart, and I know that she'll have that kind of information.
Okay, thank you. When we talk about the commemoration, and again, we're seeing a great deal of commemoration for Vimy, etc. The Afghan War Memorial, is that factored into this, or is it already being pre-planned, or is that a budget that's not budgeted?
No, we've actually we're committed to the Afghan Memorial, full stop. Okay, we have worked very hard with stakeholders over the course of my time as being Minister of Veterans Affairs. We've had 3 stakeholder summits. We're working very hard with the stakeholders who are part of commemoration. We are also doing outreach to members of the Afghan mission, led by my parliamentary secretary, Karen McCrimmon, because we want to ensure that we get this right, that we do this in a respectful manner that allows us to recognize Canada's longest engagement. In fact, where over 40,000 Canadians took part, over 150 paying the ultimate sacrifice. So we're going to get this right, sir. It's going to be done in a dignified fashion that truly reflects their bravery, courage, and commitment to this nation.
Do we have any idea of what that time frame is?
We're working with the Veterans Affairs Committee as well as consulting widely. Look, my hope is sooner rather than later, but I want to get this right.
Minister, now down to 3 minutes, Ms. Matheson.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I'd like to pick up on that question from Mr. Kitchen in regard to the Afghan War Memorial. And of course, it's very fitting to honor those who served, those who died. What I'm wondering is, will you be including those who died by suicide as a result of their service. These are the forgotten veterans, but they're still casualties of that particular war. So are there plans to make sure that their sacrifice is remembered too?
Let's be clear, we honor and respect all those who have taken part in Canadian military operations, and regardless of the circumstances of how their lives come to an end. And let's be clear, our department finds one suicide by a veteran is one too many. And that's why we are working hard with Minister Sajjan to put together a second-to-none suicide prevention strategy that allows us to move forward to even do better, where we provide a complex array of services for the men and women who leave the Canadian Armed Forces and for those who are in Veterans Affairs. And we're continuing to do better on this. It's something that we have to continue to work hard to get better at, and to have more people come forward when they have mental health concerns and when they do struggle, and that's what our department is committed to doing.
Okay, and I'd like to also continue in the same vein as Ms. Wagenthal. Only my question is how you arrived at the decision that 3 grams of marijuana per veteran a day is efficacious. I'm assuming that doctors are prescribing in terms of the needs of their patients. And I'm wondering, did you consult with physicians, with psychiatrists? How did you decide 3 grams was the right amount?
We consulted with medical experts, with veterans, with beneficiaries, with licensed producers, with a whole array of individuals, as well as did a literature review. I'll remind you that cannabis for medical purposes is not a licensed drug at this time. And since there is a policy vacuum around this, and again, I was shocked, to come into this, looking into where the department has gone with this. Surprised, 3 former ministers were briefed on this issue and the former government, and yet we saw no policy rationale behind this. So given where we were, we worked with these communities, with these stakeholders, to put in a policy that we believe is fair. I also will remind you that the College of Physicians and Surgeons have stated that 3 grams a day is within where they find the vast majority of cases of people who use this should be able to find relief. So given what we saw in the department, given that there was no policy rationale, we had to act in the interest of the wellness of veterans and their families.
Okay, thank you, Minister. That ends our time for the first session of this meeting. We're going to suspend. Again, Minister Hare and General Ninchinchuk, thank you today for taking some time out of your day to answer questions. And I noticed that the deputy has made some notes to get some information back to us. If you could get that to the clerk, and he'll distribute it to the committee. And again, on behalf of the committee, thank you, and we will suspend for 5 minutes. I'd like to welcome, give everybody a couple seconds to get back to their chairs. And I believe we do have a vote bell ringing, so I'm just going to try to... Not yet. No, not yet. We will have a vote bell ringing, so the bells go off. It's not a fire alarm. So welcome to the second hour. We have Department of Veterans Affairs in front of us. Ms. Stewart, Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief Financial Officer, Corporate Services. Mr. Butler, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy and Commemoration. And Mr. Dorian, Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery. Welcome back, everybody. We could start out with some 10 minutes of discussion, but I spoke to you earlier, and I believe you just want to get right into the questions. So
we have no opening remarks, Mr. Chair.
No opening remarks, so we can go from there. Okay, so we'll start off with 6 minutes. Mr. Broussard. Sorry.
Thanks.
Yes, I apologize.
Used to have an old mayor in Barrie that used to call me Broussard all the time, but it's actually Broussard, so that's okay. Okay, so I want to deal with the issue of suicide, and let's get that right out there. In terms of what the department does to monitor those veterans post-release, what are you doing in terms of preventing suicide among our veterans? I mean, it's becoming a real issue, and there are lots of reasons why. This committee right now is hearing about that. So I'd like to ask you that, please.
Maybe I'll start. First, we want to acknowledge that, as the minister said, one suicide is one too many, and we actually take that very seriously, understanding that it does occur. The department has a whole range of mental health services, and I believe I'm here Thursday with Dr. Cruikshank to talk about mental health and suicide. But we have a whole range of services for mental health issues that is available to our veterans to come to receive services, whether it is in our operational stress injury clinics, whether it is some of our apps. We have apps that are available, mental health first aid. We have 4,000 mental health professionals across the country, because we don't have an office in every town and we don't have an OSI clinic in every location, but we do have contracts with professionals in the field to help the veterans. And we have a 1-800, and I'm giving you the short version, but a 1-800 number that is, there's somebody on the phone, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and they can get counseling very quickly. However, the important part is for the veteran to come forward. So we know in Canada, Veterans Affairs, we have 200,000 clients, 130,000 approximately are veterans. The reality is we have 10,000 in our case managed, and those we really know and we follow them very closely. But there is a whole segment between 130,000 and 670,000 that they don't come and see us, we don't know who they are. So when they come forward, we are there to help them, but they have to come forward for help. And even if it's not service related, and we always talk about the service relationship, the 1-800 number doesn't matter if it's service related or not. You can get 20 sessions with a psychiatrist or a psychologist very quickly, irregardless if your injury was service related or not. But it's important for them to come forward. So to your question, to your point of, what are we doing for all veterans? We're not tracking all veterans, but we are tracking that 10,000 that are case managed, and to a certain extent, the 130,000 veterans we have, and 60,000 survivors.
So, with respect to the opening of the offices, then the latest back offices, what is the ratio? I know that the minister, when he discussed it, it was 25-1 was optimal. What are you seeing in terms of the uptake to those veterans offices that have been reopened, as far as the amount of veterans that are coming in? What are you seeing on that?
Presently across the country, we are running at 30-1. We're not quite at 25-1. We received the money in July. We are presently staffing the positions. Your question earlier, I forget who asked the question. The offices are not all staffed up. We opened up Saskatoon, was it last week or the week before? Well, for sure, we're not at full complement yet, but we are staffing that up. There is an uptake. Every office where we've added or reopened, there is a certain amount of people that are case managed and or veterans that are managed, not case managed. We're there to provide them services, but that's why the offices are not all the same size, is because the number of veterans served by the offices are different, right? Kelowna's catchment basin is not the same size as a Sydney. So the size will change of the number of employees but in the case of Sydney, as an example, the morning we opened, not the official opening, we were open about a week before the official opening, we actually had 3 veterans show up at the door for support the same day that the lock, we opened it up. So the veterans are coming forward. They do not have to come to an office. That's where we try to be clear. Like we provide services all kinds of ways, but for those who prefer the in-person touch, they are coming forward. As to the exact number of traffic in the offices, I don't have that in front of me, but I can probably get that because there is traffic at all these offices. But we have to remember, case managers often will actually go to the person's house. Occupational therapists or a nurse that works in the office will actually go to a person's house. The veteran doesn't need to come. It's just
can I
coming
ask you
from here.
something with respect to that? I recently visited a base, and one of the things that I heard was that there is a 10-day requirement, pre-requirement, in order to visit veterans on the part of VAC to give approval for a VAC case manager to. Can you clarify that for me?
Absolutely, I can clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. No, it's just,
Sir, we have to be quick.
Yeah, there is not a 10-day wait. They have a standing, a blanket travel authority to travel within their catchment location or their area of responsibility. If it would be outside of that, they have authority to go if it's an emergency purpose without waiting any time. But all case managers and nurses have a blanket travel authority. Their job is to get out. Now, if you're not a nurse or you're not a case manager, you may have to go to your supervisor and get it authorized. Or if it's something that's not part of your normal duties, you may have to get it authorized. But 10 days would be an extreme.
Thank you. Ms. Lockhart.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Doran, for being here today. I want to talk about the offices a little bit more and about staffing. Is that something we can talk about? Okay. We've had quite a bit of conversation about staffing of these offices and where we are as far as numbers and that sort of thing. And can you tell us, relative to the targets, where are we? What's the status?
We actually have 32 of 79 warm bodies, people working in the offices as of today. Now, we have to bear in mind that 2 offices were only open on November 30th, right? But 32 of 79 new people are actually in the offices providing services. An office like Corner Brook or Sydney have more people because they've been ongoing longer. An office like Kelowna has less people. I don't have the individual office breakdown. I can get that. It's just I don't have it with me.
Okay. Are you having any challenges staffing those offices, depending on region or how rural they are and that sort of thing?
It's more. The issues we're having are more regional than rural versus urban. Although we hear about the economics out west, we've been more challenged to get some of our case managers out west than we have out east. And if I look at my ratio of case manager or veterans per case manager, it is better in the east than it is in the west. Some of that is demographic. Some of that is just the employment. Some provinces have very competitive salary ranges. In the east, federal job salaries are quite competitive. As you move westward, some provinces pay their nurses better than other ones. Therefore, when we try to recruit case managers and or medical experts, it's a bit more challenging. We have hired people in every region. We have hired people in every office, but I can tell you that in the case of Halifax, which is not a new office, I'm very close to my 25-to-1 today, as opposed to a Vancouver or a Victoria where I'm not there. because more buoyancy in the system, it's a bit more difficult to attract or to keep.
Okay. In the testimony that we've had during our service delivery review, there was just an anecdotal comment made about requiring a master's degree to be a frontline worker, and I'd just like to get clarification on that, because the other thing that we're hearing is that veterans certainly appreciate dealing with veterans, and that sometimes understanding the military and how things work is as valuable as anything. Could you speak to that?
Thank you for the question. No, you do not need a master's position to work at Veterans Affairs. It depends on the position that you are going after. The level of qualification will depend on the position. If we're hiring a nurse, you need a nursing degree. You need your bachelor's in nursing. If you're going for a case manager, we accept bachelor's. We do accept masters, absolutely. But what we are asking for is experience in case management. So you have to have taken case manager. But we have a whole series of positions. We call them veteran service agents, which do not require education requirement to that level, which we do look at hiring more of our veterans. And I have to be careful because veterans are very well educated. A military nurse, we'd love to have. A nurse is but for the VSAs, the veteran service agents, they're not case managers and they don't have the same education. So it all depends on which position we're trying to fill. It varies.
Okay. And do we have targets for the number of veterans that we're hiring?
We have no clear target yet, but the minister is challenging us to come up with a clear target. And I don't know if my colleague would like to talk about the hiring, but...
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair, in response to that query. So this has become an important issue, as you know, for the government and certainly for the Department of Veterans Affairs, to the point that the department has actually established a veterans hiring unit in our human resource area. It is being led by a veteran himself, who's now taken on the task of being responsible for reaching out to other government departments, establishing an information base to enable those departments to facilitate the actual employment of veterans. So we have not established fixed targets yet, certainly for our department, but I think it's very clear that our minister and our deputy minister are looking for employment of higher numbers, and so you will begin to see performance reporting on that coming in the following months. So it's a very aggressive, very committed plan right now to try to increase the number of veterans in our department and in the public service as a whole.
So can you just clarify? So you're saying that it's an initiative of your department to start reaching out to other departments to start encouraging? Did I hear you right or no?
What we want to try to do in response to that question is to basically establish Veterans Affairs, if you will, as almost a center of excellence in terms of helping veterans and helping other departments in the exercise. What we have learned over the last year or so is that there are many challenges for veterans who are trying to come into the public service. So those challenges can be trying to equate skill sets that they've developed in the military to translate those skill sets to civilian employment. Some of the challenges can be as simple as how do I compete on a competition process in the public service. The military promotional scheme is quite different than the public service. So what we're trying to do actually is to develop a center of excellence in this area that at the end of the day will help facilitate hiring of veterans right across the public service as well as in our own department.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. I appreciate the information, the filling information that you're able to provide. Recently, I received a response to an order paper question that I asked in regard to the number of claims for service from VAC made by veterans who have service-related injuries due to sexual harassment and sexual trauma. And the answer I received back was that neither VAC or the VRAB track this particular information. They don't track the data. I wonder why not, and I wonder if you don't track for the cause of an injury, then are you not creating gaps in terms of the services that you can provide?
You are correct. We do not track the cause of the injury. We track what is the injury, because for us, it's not what caused it. And I'm not, and I want to be very careful. We've been working very closely with Just 700. We take this extremely seriously. We're talking to them to get our adjudicators to have a better understanding of sexual trauma. And our doctors are very well aware, and we're working with them to put something on our website. But the reality is, when it comes to the adjudication process, for us, is it service related, and we have to ensure the service relationship, but we have to acknowledge that, you know, sexual trauma of all sorts happens on the base, happens, you know, on exercise. So to us, that's a service relationship. But for us, it's more important what is the injury, and to treat the injury. And you know, often they come into us as mental health injuries. There's 2 or 3 different types that we see more often. And we're working with, like I said, with Just 700 to better understand this, our adjudicators. But that's what we track, not the cause. Like, if you fall off a truck and you hurt, and I know that you may say it's not quite the same thing, but you fall off a truck and you hurt your back, or you jump in the parachute, you hurt your back. For us, the issue is you have a bad back. So when it comes to sexual trauma, there has been an event, and we don't care if the person has been charged or not. We don't care, you know, has it been documented, and is the doctor telling us you have a diagnostic for this? You will receive the treatments, you will receive the disability award or disability pension for which you are entitled to. That's why we don't track. We don't track many of the causes. We track what is the injury, and then what are we doing to help the veteran.
Okay, thank you. I was a bit alarmed by the response that there was no information about the number of claims, because to me that sent off a red light that this is something very serious, and I wanted to be sure that the attention it needed was there. So I thank you for
Please
your
be
answer.
assured for the entire committee that we take this extremely seriously. The main group working on this, the Just 700 group, have been to our stakeholder conferences. They are part of my service excellence advisory committee. She sits on this, the person leading this group, to make sure that we understand it. I do not want in any way downplay this. We do take this very seriously.
Okay, thank you. Now, the minister answered our questions in regard to the decision to limit marijuana to 3 grams per day, and I wondered, are there other drugs that that the department has looked at and capped in terms of the amount that is allowed, and if so, which drugs, and what was the reasoning behind that particular decision?
First of all, marijuana is not in the same category of the other drugs that we dispense. That's why you get an authorization. You do not get a prescription for marijuana, because the other drugs that typically are on the market, there is a PIN number. The doctors know what type, and I am not a doctor, and you have doctors on that can speak to this much better than I can, so I apologize to the doctors. But the doctors know what type of prescription to give and to what quantities, because they can refer to a manual that says, I have a pneumonia, I will give, you know, penicillin for 7 days, 3 times a day, 250 milligrams per, and I'm just making this up, by the way, but in the case of marijuana, that does not exist. The research is very limited on the benefits of marijuana. We're not saying there is no benefit. There is some benefits, but it is limited. Anecdotally, we hear it has helped people, and we don't refute that. But the reality is, there's also some contradictions with using marijuana, especially for mental health issues. And some very high-level psychiatrists have come forward and said of some of the issues that marijuana may cause. And 10 grams a day is a lot of marijuana. So we have to be very clear. The policy that we've put out is a reimbursement policy. We are not replacing the doctors. We are not replacing the medical health professionals. What we're saying is, according to the College of Physicians, according to Health Canada, the upper safe level is approximately 3 grams a day.
Thank you. Mr. Fraser?
Thanks very much, and thank you for being here today and answering our questions. I was asking the Minister about earnings loss benefit and permanent impairment allowance in particular, and I'd like to drill down on that with you a little bit. They are mentioned in the supplementary estimates B. With regard to the earnings loss benefit, can you explain who qualifies for that, how that decision is made, and the timelines on decisions now that the formula has been changed for the amount that the person receives?
Sure. So look, thanks very much for the question, and I might say it's a pleasure to be here with this committee. For the earnings loss benefit, the earnings loss benefit is an income support benefit, and it's paid to veterans who are eligible for our rehabilitation program. So if you have a rehabilitation need, either vocational or psychosocial or medical, while you're in that program, you are eligible to receive income support. So those decisions are made at the front end of the process at the operational level, and they're actually made relatively quickly in the process. You can stay on earnings loss benefits for the whole length of time you are completing your rehabilitation plan. So as an example, you and your case manager will work out what, if it's a vocational rehabilitation need, what are your goals, what are your plan, what you have to do to become re-established. During that period, which averages right now, or it could be up to 3 years even, or even more, depending on the circumstances, you will get this monthly income support benefit. If at the end of that exercise, you and your case manager determine that you are no longer you're not going to meet the goals and objectives of the plan, you are essentially, totally and permanently incapacitated, which is the term the legislation uses. You can then go on what we call extended earnings loss at the same rate, 90%, through to age 65. And then at age 65 it ends, and you are then qualified for our retirement income security benefit, which is a different program, but provides benefits into the post-age 65 period.
Thank you. With regard to the permanent impairment allowance, can you elaborate on that a little bit further as to how qualification is determined and if there are any problems on the timeline of getting people approved for that?
So with the permanent impairment allowance, with the establishment of the new Veterans Charter back in 2006, the permanent impairment allowance was a program designed to try to address the career impacts of severe disability on veterans. So that was the fundamental policy rationale. The legislation and the regulations actually define eligibility. And it's really for those most seriously disabled. So the categories for permanent impairment allowance include veterans who have lost limbs, they may be totally blind, they may have total loss of hearing. As you can anticipate, very severe limitations. Back with Budget 2015, there was an amendment made to the regulations to try to broaden access to the program. And so there was an additional element added to the regulations to say veterans who are experiencing significant issues with mobility, whatever the cause. That had the effect of increasing the number of veterans who were able to access the program. With Budget 2016, however, there is an effort being made now to try to address what is called the grade level distribution. So within the permanent impairment allowance program, there are 3 categories of eligibility, and that sets the pay scales from about 500 to, I think, 1,000 to about 1,500. And what Budget 2016 has basically said is what we need to do is do a better job at ensuring veterans are distributed more evenly across those three categories. Because the ombudsman, our ombudsman and various stakeholders had criticized the program for limiting the access to the higher financial benefits associated with PIA. It was simply the distribution. So coming April 1st, 2018, you'll see the introduction of a new model for trying to ensure improved grade level distribution across the program.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to the disability award, I'm wondering if you could touch on that as well and contrast it to the permanent impairment allowance so we understand exactly what that means and how that will be rolled out.
So that's a great question, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So again, permanent impairment allowance is considered to be an economic benefit, one of the economic elements of the new Veterans Charter. Again, the rationale was targeted at veterans who had career limiting impacts of their employment, and it was targeted at the most seriously disabled. The disability award, however, under the new Veterans Charter, it is a non-economic benefit paid for recognition and compensation for service-related disability. You receive that award depending on the degree or extent of disability, and with Budget 2016, come April 1, 2018, the maximum amount of the award for a 100% disabled veteran will move from $310,000 to $360,000.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Yolfison.
All right, thank you. Now, we were talking earlier about St. Anne's Hospital, and one of the questions I had now, will St. Anne's, in its now since it's been transferred to the province, will it have the capacity to carry out research on veterans care? Do you know anything about that aspect of it, of its activities?
Well, what I would tell you is that at St. Anne's, we'll continue to have our OSI clinic, which provides both walk-in and residential care. In terms of a Center of Excellence for Mental Health, you know that this was part of the budget of the Minister's mandate letter to create a Center of Excellence in Mental Health. And you know that we're doing a lot of work, the department, with our colleagues in National Defence and the Royal Ottawa in terms of as a focal point for that type of research. So beyond that, that would be sort of the framework, the center of the effort. So St. Anne's focuses on long-term care for veterans as well as having the OSI clinic there. Michelle, I don't know whether you have anything else to add to that.
Okay, thank you. Now, in regards to the staffing at St. Anne's, has there been any issues in the transition with regards to recruitment and retention policies among staff?
As the deputy mentioned, a percentage of the staff did not accept the transfer. So the province had to do some recruitment, and I don't have all the numbers in front of me, so I wouldn't want to give you wrong numbers. And they did have some initial challenges get some people there, but the care of our veterans were always taken care of. The medical staff was on site. Some of the issues we have been hearing about is more in the realm of the culture. Like, you know, the staff at St. Anne had been at St. Anne's for, well, the director herself had been there for 35 years, I believe, or 37 years, right? So there was a real culture of serving our veterans and that, and the new people coming in have to relearn this. St. Anne is totally, or the province of Quebec is totally committed to ensuring the veterans receive the care they deserve and they need. We're already seeing some benefits, as the deputy mentioned. Family members, spouses specifically, can now be in the hospital with their spouse, which was not allowable under our act before. They may not be in the same room, but at least they're often, if not the same floor, they're very close to each other, which is important to the veterans. And as any transfer, there's always some growing pains. the transfer agreement was very clear on what they were supposed to deliver. So, but we do meet with them. I don't personally, but both myself and Mr. Butler have two of our top DGs meeting with them on a regular basis to ensure that they are meeting everything that's under the transfer agreement.
Okay, thank you. Now, now in regards to the service available and the language that's available, under the Official Languages Act, of course, it being under Department of National Defense jurisdiction, you'd have a guarantee of service in both official languages. Have there been any? Have there been provisions to guarantee that now that it's under the province of Quebec, that those will still be protected?
It is in the transfer agreement that they are to provide services in the language of the veteran. And I have not heard of any issue up to date, personally, so.
All right, thank you. Now, have you heard any, now we were talking earlier about the opening of the Veterans Affairs offices. I know we're still in transition. Are you receiving any feedback now from the services veterans are receiving since these offices have started to open?
I can't say I've heard from every location yet.
Yes.
But in some locations I have heard, and the veterans are quite pleased of the services they're receiving and the fact that they can now go to an office and actually talk to somebody. I have heard from probably 3 of our 5 offices that veterans are quite pleased.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Wagentall.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. I have to carry on with the question about marijuana, and it's really important to me that you understand the impetus behind this. It's coming from multiple letters that I am receiving, not from veterans themselves necessarily, but also from caregivers, a lot of times family members. And their concern is extreme, and they talk very clearly of the difference between their loved one's condition on multiple pharmaceuticals versus using medicinal marijuana, which is very different, we know, than recreational marijuana that's going to be available to Canadians. It's a totally different product that does not provide the hallucination, it provides pain killing. And there are individuals, I've been studying it extensively because I want to know what the difference is. And these individuals are saying, you're taking away my loved one who is finally in a condition where we can talk to each other again. Like these are real situations. And the reason that they've needed the amounts that they're talking about is because they don't sit and smoke it. They actually make creams. They use it in meals because it absorbs better and you don't destroy your lungs. It's all very rational, what I am hearing. And yet we're prepared to say we're lowering it, but I don't understand exactly what process was taken to determine how that should happen. And when you compare the side effects of being on 1,000 pills a month, and believe me, these women, they document. So we're not dealing with pie-in-the-sky ideas here. They know exactly what they're giving and how much it's costing. Some of them $100 per dosage per day. And we're talking about the difference in side effects, difference in cost, and the difference in having their loved one be able to start to work on other things in their lives because they're no longer in this level of pain. So I don't understand how we came to the decision of 3 milligrams and how many, the minister said that he did speak to veterans, but he didn't say how many veterans who are taking medicinal marijuana he spoke to, or how many caregivers he spoke to. So I need some more clarification on where we're at with this. issue.
Well, Mr. Chair, thanks so much for that question and evident passion behind it. And I think you reflect the challenges that the department has had in dealing with the issue. What I would tell you is that the consultations were actually quite extensive. We are very concerned and focused in the department with establishing evidence-based policy. And what we did was there was extensive consultation with medical experts, with the literature, and the minister had commented on the fact that even the College of Family Physicians has made it absolutely clear to its membership that 3 grams a day is the upper limit of what it perceives to be a safety factor for the use of marijuana. So those kinds of considerations very much influence what we were doing. We have to be concerned, obviously, with the health and well-being of veterans. The policy was framed in that context, and so we wanted to focus on if we're going to reimburse, and that's all we do. The Department of Veterans Affairs treatment program only reimburses. We do not prescribe, we do not authorize. The issue, in a way, that you're raising is a fundamental challenge that we have, I think, in the Canadian context and abroad, in terms of there is very little research to show what, from a scientific perspective, what efficacy is achieved through this. So we had to formulate a policy based on weighing the anecdotal evidence from veterans and their partners, which we heard, with where the scientific evidence seems to be. And those two do not necessarily map together very well. So again, we were charged with developing a reimbursement policy rooted in health and well-being of veterans, those concerns, and given the recommendations of numerous professionals in the field, we landed on the 3 milligrams.
Yeah, I understand that then, but however, I would say that we know that in Israel it's been used for 50 years? 50 years. There are places in the world, again, similar to mefloquine, where we seem to be way behind in getting the evidence and going beyond what we see and hear and experience here in Canada versus what is happening in other places in the world as well. I have to say, if there's doctors and they have the opportunity to prescribe something that they should get the information on then and know that is not addictive in the same way as pharmaceuticals are, don't cost these people and give a better result, why aren't we going that direction, I guess is what I'm asking. Because clearly in the paper the other day, the individual in charge of basically creating the OxyContin issue is now moving into running one of our medical marijuana companies. And
Mr. Bertina?
There you go.
I want to ask about the data that you use to put the estimates together, because other experience I've had with public works, and then you don't know part of a road's going to collapse, or the looking forward part. So can you, when you're working on the budget, reliably predict the near-term and long-term financial requirements for veterans services? Is that something that the graphs and the data are reliable with?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for that question. Over 90% of Veterans Affairs Canada's budget goes directly to veterans, be it benefits and or services. And those benefits and services are event-driven in that a disability or an illness triggers entitlement and eligibility for certain benefits. And we also have the fact that we've got to look and project out over the entire lifespan of veterans. So we have a lot of actuarial work that takes place to look at those long-term forecasts. And we also have in-year cash forecasts that are more near-term that we need to look at, so both in tandem. And what we do is we work very closely with the Office of the Chief Actuary, and every year we update our client forecast. So there's vast amounts of data that, together with the actuarial staff, we look at. and we attempt to make the best forecast possible. And I would add that the event-driven nature of our expenditures is such that our benefits and our services are in special purpose allotments, and the technical term is quasi-stats, but it does indicate that they're event-driven. So in any given fiscal year, whether we have 10 veterans that come forward or 10,000, we assure through our forecasts that every veteran receives the benefits and services to which they are entitled.
Well, thank you. If a veteran becomes a federal employee, how do you deal with the benefits side? Because presumably...
Stop you. The bells are ringing, so to continue the meeting, I need unanimous consent. Do I have unanimous consent to continue the meeting?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Mr. Bertini.
Thank you. So a veteran is entitled to benefits, and a new employee coming into the federal government will get the federal benefits. So I'm just curious to know how that's dealt with. If a veteran, because we're looking to hire more veterans, so does that create any sort of an issue on that? Is it a contract position?
No, it doesn't create an issue. I mean, under the Superannuation Act, and I know because I used to be the DG of superannuation at one point in my career, so there is a limit that you can accumulate in your pension, but not all veterans have 35 years of service. So they can come to us, they can either, opt to be in the pension or opt to be not in the pension. So we work, each case is individual, we would work with the veteran. The veterans we are hiring, we actually try to hire them as indeterminate staff to bring them on strength. The majority that we are bringing in, that's what it is. There are some temporary positions, but I don't think we have many veterans that are in the temporary positions. We may have some, but not a lot. So the bigger challenge we have, as I think that, I'm not sure who mentioned it, is really for the veteran to understand the public service. You join the armed forces, you have an interview when you join, and the deputy minister or General Natinchuk is fond of saying he's had 2 interviews, one when he joined and one when he became the Chief of Defense Staff. The rest of your career is managed by the armed forces. In the public service, that's very different. The culture is very different. So we have more issues there, making sure they understand how to navigate, and I think Mr. Butler talked about it, how to navigate the system of the public service as opposed to the benefit side. And they're entitled to their benefits. They're entitled, and I've been talking to a lot of the federal councils. Just because somebody has PTSD, it doesn't mean they cannot work for the federal government. When you read the paper, you get a certain segment, but a lot of veterans are very, very functioning, no issue. They want to work there. They can work. They're able and capable to work. And so I've been talking a lot to our federal colleagues to make sure that there's no stigma attached to any of this.
The $5.6 million earmarked as funding to support improvements to the permanent impairment allowance, the earnings loss benefit, and the disability award. What made it necessary to increase these appropriations?
Okay, excuse me, thank you for the question. The funding to support improvements to the permanent impairment allowance, the earnings loss benefit, and the disability award in this supplementary estimates B has to do with the funding required to implement these benefits. So, as I'm sure many would understand, in order to implement significant changes to become effective the 1st of April 2017, there is a tremendous amount of information technology system design and implementation to ensure, and user testing to ensure that on that day when it comes into force, the benefits are accurate and correct. So that's what those costs pertain to.
I see that. Thank you. Thanks very much.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for coming again to sit with us. You had mentioned earlier, and I just trying to clarify for me, different sizes of the new offices that have been opened up, and we have many of them across the country. And I realize there's a whole bunch of them, and it's for you to actually give us the number. And what I'm looking for is how many, you said different size of number of veterans in those offices. Can we get, at least if you can't give it to us now, a list of the numbers that are seen at each one of these offices?
Absolutely. I can go through them now, or I can provide it to the committee. I have them.
Okay, sure, please.
Well, in the case of Kelowna, there's 3,500 clients managed there. So those are not case managed clients. That's your general client group. And there's 88 case managed veterans in the area that the office would take. Prince George, 1,200, 64 case managed. Saskatoon, approximately 29. I can give you precise numbers, but they would fluctuate a little bit. 71 case managed. In the case of Surrey, which we have not opened yet, it's a brand new office that's coming. 7,441, about 200 case managed. Brandon has 2,400 clients, 123 are case managed. Thunder Bay, 1,692, 57 case managed. Windsor, 2,776, 126 are case managed. Sydney, 2,181 clients, 145 are case managed. Charlottetown, 2,100, 100 case managed. And Corner Brook, 943 clients, 118 case managed. And we can't forget the North. The Minister and the Deputy spoke about the North. We have 300 clients identified in the North. 15 are case managed. We actually suspect this will go up a lot because the Rangers, which patrol the North on a yearly basis for Canada, for the Armed Forces, although they fall in different category, when they are on patrol, they are eligible for VAC benefits if they get injured. And we don't have a lot of those people, so that's the outreach we're really doing to the Ranger groups to try to make sure that, you know, as an example, one of my DGs was up there in April in Iqaluit, outside of Iqaluit somewhere, and they went into a very small village, and there was 3 veterans, and one of the elders said, "You should talk to this one here. He's having issues." And this was not somebody anywhere on our radar. So we think that number will go up, but at the moment, those are the numbers.
Thank you. I'd asked earlier a question about the $773 million that is set aside for healthcare, rehab, and reestablishment of services. And I'm trying to get an idea of what percentage, really more, not necessarily exact figures, but what percentages of that $773 million actually goes to those areas, and with the new estimates, where those would factor into those 3 categories that were listed.
Thank you for the question. I don't have that breakdown, but I will be delighted to provide that to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. How much time do I have?
30.
Okay, thank you. When we talk about the, I should say, there's $1,480,000 in statutory expenditures. And these, I suppose, they're essentially increased expenditures for employee benefits. Can you sort of tell me what those benefits are and how many employees would be getting those?
Thank you for your question. Those employee benefits pertain to the approximate 20% that is applied to account for such things as accommodation and employee general benefits to administer their employment. We do have some new hires this year, as mentioned, with our office openings. So much of that applies to the new staff to ensure that we support them completely, not just their salary, but also the employee benefits.
Okay, thank you.
20 seconds.
These are budgeted amounts, or are they actual figures?
They are figures that are based on our best knowledge of who we've hired and who we're going to hire.
Over the next 6 months?
This year.
This year, thank you.
Okay, thank you. 3 minutes, Ms. Matheson.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you for your input. Mr. Butler, you made reference to the Centers of Excellence, and I wondered what process is in place for determining where they will be located, and were there 3 that were planned? Is that correct?
I think that if you go back to the Minister's mandate letter, there is reference to creation of a Center of Excellence for mental health and PTSD. and creation of a second Center of Excellence. So the work that has been done to date obviously links back to the Center of Excellence for Mental Health, and that's the one that we talked a bit about in the context of the Royal Hospital, the Royal Ottawa, and the work that's been done there. Yep.
Okay, so it'll likely be in Ottawa then, that particular centre?
For that effort, right.
Okay, thank you. I also wondered if the department has done any surveys of injured vets to find out from the vets themselves, do they feel that there are gaps in services? Has there been an opportunity for veterans to express how they feel about the quality of service, the care that they receive? And if not, are there any plans to do such a survey?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We are in the process of going out. Actually, it's on the market right now for a consultant to actually do exactly what you're talking about. We're also looking, is there better ways to capture the information when the veteran leaves one of our offices or makes a phone call? So we're looking at that to gather the information, because we hear about the people that are not happy about our services, but I receive also emails and letters of people that are quite happy with their services. We never hear about those, so we do want to go out and make sure that we get the right thing, and we haven't been doing public opinion research, but it's on the market as of, I believe, yesterday for 15 days to get a consultant, and then to go out and survey, hopefully, a very good percentage of the 670,000 veterans we have out there.
In this business, Mr. Don, you very, very rarely hear from the happy ones.
Absolutely, ma'am.
I have one more question, and it pertains to the Last Post Fund. And I'm sorry, I missed some of what the minister said. I know that the amount that a family can receive has been increased, but has the cutoff changed? It was $12,500. If you had assets of more than $12,500, you weren't eligible. Has that changed?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The answer is yes, it has. So that cutoff was very controversial, and with this budget implementation, which came in effect in October, it's actually moved to $35,000. So it's a significant change in the amount of income that a family can have before they qualify. So we anticipate that'll be a significant improvement in access.
Yeah, no, that's very encouraging, because it disqualified so many families, and it was an extremely low cutoff in light of the kind of assets a family would have, a veteran would have.
Thank you. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank all three of you for appearing again. And I'm sure through the course of the history of this committee, we will see you again. But thank you for your excellent testimony. On behalf of the committee, thank you for all the good work you do for the men and women that have served. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Fraser, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.